Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my opportunity to invite our next speaker. We are going to have a presentation on smart metering rollout plans for DISCOMs in near future. We have Mr. Saurabh Kumar, energy expert. Mr. Saurabh Kumar was the executive vice chairperson in the Energy Efficiency Services Limited, EESL, has implemented globally on Unnat Jyoti by affordable LEDs for all programs and Street Light National Program, e-mobility, smart meters, tri-generation and decentralized solar power plants. He's now working for Reliance Industries Limited. He led the growth of the company from less than 1 million turnover in 2013 to over 400 million in 2021 with operations in UK, UAE and South Asia. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Saurabh Kumar.
Thank you very much and thank you for inviting me. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I don't have a presentation, and the reason for that is that I'm no longer working for the government, and therefore I would not like to put out something which I'm not authorized to, but I will nevertheless try in the next 10 or 15 minutes put together what has been the thought process, what has been the thinking in the government, and where do I see or do we see this thing headed towards as we move ahead. So smart meter is not really something which is very new, which is something which is not being talked about for a long time. It has actually been part of the government agenda for the last 2 decades. If you look at the APDRP schemes and the RAPDRP schemes, all of them had indicated that we must, as a sector, move towards smart energy metering. In fact, way back in 2005 or 6, when I was part of the Ministry of Power, the National Smart Grid Mission was set up, and there were about 14 or 15 pilot projects that were done at various locations, with the idea of having the learnings and then making a scalable project that could change potentially all the meters into smart in a pre-specified period of time. Nevertheless, it carried on. The successive schemes of APDRP, which is the IPDS, also included smart meters as one of the key elements of the scheme. Up and until I think the most progressive reform scheme that at least I have seen over the last 18 years. I've been in the sector for almost 20 years with Ministry of Power and other entities, has been the revised distribution reform scheme that was announced last year. And I'll focus particularly on the smart meter aspect of it, because the other part of the scheme is pretty much very similar to what existed in APDRP and IPDS. So for 2 or 3 reasons, this scheme is something that needs to be implemented in the right spirit and at the pace at which it has been envisaged. And why am I saying this? For a very simple reason. If you recollect 2020 and 21, when the pandemic hit this country, one of the worst affected amongst many other sectors was the electricity sector. And electricity sector, it was becoming difficult for the DISCOMs to issue bills. It was absolutely difficult for them to collect bills. The collections went down dramatically, and therefore, if you recall, the government of India came out with a bailout package of close to 1 lakh crores. Now, the question that one must ask: if the pandemic was not there, would the government of India have needed to put this kind of a distress package out? And the quick answer is yes, because this is not the first package, and if situations don't improve, this will also not be the last one. I remember all this started off in 2002 when the outstanding dues of the generators became a big concern, and we had the one-time settlement scheme, which was led at that point in time by Mr. Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia. Then again, we have a financial restructuring package in 2008 or 9. Then we have had successive packages that have come in over the last 1 decade as well. And at the heart of the problem is the fact that the overall efficiency, the billing efficiency in the country average is about 84%, which means 16% of electricity that is sold by distribution companies is not even billed. So there's no question of any collection. What does this 16% translate into? India sold about 1,300 billion units of electricity last year. 16% of it is nearly 200 billion units, which was never billed. Now, take an average cost, very conservative number of 5 rupees per unit. The actual cost of supply of DISCOMs is actually higher than 5 rupees. Even if you take 5 rupees as the economic loss per unit, we're talking about 1 lakh crore of dues which were never billed. So there's no question of any collection. And that is at the heart of the problem that we see as far as the electricity sector is concerned. The only way forward is, of course, smart meters. That is the only way you could possibly increase the billing efficiency to 99, or maybe 100%, which is the international norm. So to capture this, the government has come out with the scheme, and there's something very innovative and very different and very fresh that is part of the scheme. Traditionally, as you all know, and I'm sure most of you have been following the power sector and have worked in power sector, metering is an area that the DISCOMs has been a traditional DISCOM area. And most metering installations have been done by way of supply contracts, where given a budget allocation, the DISCOMs buy meters and they install meters in the premises. They may charge rental from the consumers, but the fact remains the meters reside in the books of the distribution utilities. What has changed here is a very important change, which I'm sure many of the experts and of the sector in this forum would appreciate. The whole supply contract has been shifted to a service contract, something that is called in the UK and Europe meter asset provider model, MAP model. Some others call it metering as a service, which means that the DISCOMs don't have to wait for a budget allocation to buy meters. They can use, as was mentioned in the introduction, that ESL actually became the first MAP in this country. We actually introduced this meter as a service model starting with UP and Haryana, and it is running absolutely successfully and very, very fine. Out of the 2.5 million meters that have been installed till date, almost 2.1 million meters are actually on the books of ESL. So what is the difference in this model? A, DISCOMs don't have to wait for budget allocations to be given to them so that they can proceed with the smart meter installation. And that's a big thing, that you are avoiding the use of public money for purposes that they are not necessarily required. You can use it for social sector, you can use it for health sector, education sector. Number two, if you look at the public DISCOMs, and I'm making a distinction, knowing fully well what I'm saying. If you look at the public DISCOMs, they don't have the skill sets really to put together an ecosystem that is necessary for smart meters. It's not just about replacing a meter. In fact, the biggest part of the smart meter installation and its running is the IT backend. And that is an area where most public DISCOMs have very little capacity. Very little capacity in cloud computing, very little capacity in integration, very little capacity in data analytics. And therefore, this model where the meter is not taken directly by the DISCOMs, but it resides in the books of anyone who's doing it, whether it is ESL or IntelliSmart or maybe Tata Power or whosoever else. And they provide billing as a service. And that is the most important aspect in the scheme that has been announced. The scheme also goes, the second part of which I wanted to mention is that the scheme goes and talks about the fact that all meters will be operated on a prepaid mode. Now, the jury may be out whether this is good or that it is not very good, whether the consumer should have the right to choose, like in a telecom network, whether I want to be a prepaid customer or a postpaid customer. Leave that aside for a minute and look at it from a DISCOM's perspective, whether it is a private DISCOM or a public DISCOM. The fact that you get money upfront before the use of electricity or the sale of electricity is something that would possibly go a long way in reducing the working capital requirement of the distribution company. And let me tell you, if you look at the books of any DISCOM, the interest burden is the second most important expenditure after power purchase. So this has been a very well thought out scheme by the government of India, a very thoughtfully crafted scheme, where with the intent of reviving the health of the distribution companies. Now, it is not just distribution companies. It is also very attractive to a private investor. And I think if there is one opportunity where large scale private capital can flow in the power distribution sector, here is the one that is there. Why it is a good proposition for an investor like ESL, maybe EDF, or maybe a Macquarie who do this work in the US and UK, is because you get the money upfront and it is there under your control in some manner. And I'll explain what that control is. And that is because if you see most of the DISCOMs being in such poor financial health, that if I were to go to a bank and say that my counterparty is this public DISCOM, it's very difficult for me to raise a loan or a debt or even equity at a reasonable terms, because all these banks will add risk capital to the interest rate, and therefore it might just become unviable for me to any longer do this project. So the new scheme, and if you have gone through the standard contracts that have been drafted out and put out, it says that there will be a direct debit facility on the revenue account of the DISCOM, where the first charge will be on the person making that investment in giving metering as a service to a DISCOM. Now, this is something which is, according to me, would attract a lot of private investment, because you are taking out the counterparty risk almost completely by making the system prepaid smart and giving the first charge and a direct debit facility for the revenues of the investor. The third thing is that it is based on a rental model. For about 90 months, the selected supplier of the metering as a service would continue to provide an SLA-based service to the DISCOM, and the SLAs are that the system uptime has to be 99%. The billing efficiency must be a minimum of 97%. Although in the case of prepaid meters, it really doesn't matter, because you're not sending out a bill to consumers as you do in a postpaid system. So it is basically trying to push the envelope on efficiency, push the envelope on smart operations, and towards becoming a world-class electricity distribution grid as far as the metering is concerned. So this is a very, very important step that has happened. Now, if you see, coming back to the question that was asked to me, where are we headed to next? I think the scheme has been in operation for just over a year, or maybe a little under. I don't remember exactly which month it was announced last year. But if you see what is happening in the market, nearly 4 crore meter bids on an OPEX model, the meter as a service, are already out in the market. In fact, the state of Bihar, the bidding has already closed, and it was very refreshing to see very large industrial conglomerates, actually, who have never had any past experience in metering, have actually entered the fray. This augurs really, really well. I am given to understand that about 10 to 12 bids have been received. It shows the kind of confidence that the private investors have on the entire scheme itself. B, it also, perhaps for the first time in 20 years, that you're seeing private capital flowing into distribution sector. And that is a very good news for the electricity distribution sector. And thirdly, given the fact that there are so many players in the market, the economics of it will play out for the benefit of the distribution company in terms of a lower rental, because the more higher the competition, you expect a lower rental fees. And by the way, all these bids are based on what is the monthly rental that the bidder is going to ask for from the DISCOM in lieu of the metering as a service. Let me come to the last part of my words here. The confidence that came about in the government of India putting this scheme together was actually provided by the project that EESL had done. And we had done projects in not very easy DISCOMs. It was in UP, and I must say hats off to the administration of UP, who actually took a very progressive step. The second one is Bihar, and Bihar I must compliment once again, because Bihar is the only state today which has 100% gone on prepaid smart meters. Now, if we look at the statistics, and that is what we presented to the government, and basis that this confidence in taking up a scheme on an OPEX mode was perhaps came in. When we look at what was ESL's rental across states, it was around 85 rupees per month per meter. And I'm talking about a single phase meter, which constitute almost 80% of the meters in this country. And what we looked at is that the billing efficiency of UP, which was 78% before the smart meter started, reached right up to 99%. The average increase in revenue from the meters was almost 200 to 250 rupees in various DISCOM, and it was actually as high as 500 rupees in the New Delhi Municipal Council area. Now the question is asked, how did this happen? I mean, is it because the meter is faulty? No, absolutely not. There are two reasons. If you look at any, and maybe many of us have also experienced this, many a times there's no meter reading physically that happens on our meters, and we get a flat rate billing. There are meters which are lying burned, they are not functional, and there's a flat rate billing happening. So it's not just about the number of bills that are read physically every month. It's about the quality of billing. And with a smart meter, because there is a two-way communication, that actually goes to 100%. And second is another very intuitive and very simple reason why these numbers have shown the way they are. And that is the fact that if you recollect, I'm sure many of you will know that the electricity system billing is on two parts. One is a fixed part, and one is the variable part. The fixed part is the rental, which depends upon how much load, sanctioned load you have in your house. Now imagine if you've taken a connection 10 years ago when you only had one air conditioner. You may be at a 3 kilowatt load, and your fixed charges are basis that sanctioned load. But over the next 10 years, you have added 4 more air conditioners in your house. Your actual load may be about 7 to 8 kilowatts, but you're paying the rental only for 3 kilowatts, because in a manual system there is just no way to check that the connected load in a system. So these two things itself has demonstrated without any doubt, because this is all data-based outputs, that this is a revenue earning, self-income generating service that the DISCOMs have. So they earn 200 rupees a month at a minimum, and they pay out only 85 rupees to a service provider. They still retain a large part of the earnings, additional revenue that they have. And then my last part, which I have mentioned it elsewhere, in UP during the pandemic, in the smart meter areas, the collections were almost 97%, because it was all digital. It was all based on your mobile app, wallets, and there was no problem. In Bihar, before the first lockdown, we had only about 25,000 prepaid smart meters. And every single day, on those 25,000 smart meters, Bihar DISCOMs got 5 lakh rupees as recharge amount every single day. Therefore, in the end, what I feel is that the number of meters that will be put out for bids in the market will only increase. The government wants about 10 crore meters to be done in 3 years, a tall order, but I think with the number of players coming out in the market, I think it is quite doable. It's quite possible, and with the kind of instrument that have been put in place, with the kind of incentives that have been given to the DISCOMs under the distribution scheme, where for each meter replacement they get about 900 rupees as incentives from the central government, which means this 85 rupees may actually become 50 rupees and makes their earnings much more. So I'm very optimistic. I have a feeling that already we have never seen such kind of a glut in the metering sector, and this will only increase. Although it is still early days, we have almost 30 crore meters to be replaced in this country. But I'm sure, as they say, well begun is half done. And let me stop at that. If there's any question, I'm happy to answer. If there's anything else that you require me to share, I will be happy to share. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. We have a few questions. The first question is, in the light of the RDSS scheme and the government grants ranging only from 15 to 22.5% of such a huge capex requirement, and considering the current financial health of DISCOMs, we'd like to request you to share your viewpoint on the investor sentiment and the role of industry in such a large-scale program needed for 100% smart meter coverage.
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to this in my address, and let me reiterate once again. The whole intent is to get private sector investment. And that is why a very robust payment security mechanism has been developed, which is what I talked about, that you have a prepaid smart meter where the revenues get collected and the first charge in a direct debit. It's not just the first charge, direct debit is to the investor. And we have seen in the bids that have just been sent in for the Bihar DISCOMs, about 25 lakh bid, and it's a reasonably large, maybe 5,000 crores investment. We have seen about 12 players, where almost 4 or 5 are absolutely new, who have no history in smart metering, or even metering for that matter. We also know that there are institutions like Macquarie, which is one of the largest providers of metering as a service worldwide, is just getting ready to enter this market. So yes, the DISCOM counterparties are not the best to have in terms of any investments and engagements. But given the fact that, as I told you and I shared with you our actual experience in ESL, where the additional revenue that gets generated is much more than the rental that the DISCOM has to pay. And with this payment security mechanism, I have a feeling that the interest from the private sector and private capital will only increase. I know of at least 3 other new entrants who are preparing to bid in various tenders that are currently out.
All right. Thank you very much. And another question. In a price-sensitive market like India, you mentioned that with higher competition would lead to lower rentals, which may also mean diminished margins for market players. Will this be a market entry barrier for new entrants and other multinational companies as well?
Not really, if you ask me, because, as I said, smart meter is a commodity. So out of that 86 rupees, if I presume that my smart meter costs me 3,000 rupees as of now, the component-wise cost is about 32. Balance is all communications and IT backend. So I have a feeling that tech companies who are able to put together a large volume of these interventions, whether it is Jio or it is a IBM or Microsoft or Tech Mahindra, the larger backend IT systems that they are able to put together, the lower will be the cost of operations. I don't see this as an entry barrier anyway at anything, because as I said, the cost of meter also is going to go down with volumes, and that's what we all would like to see. And that's why the sweetener that has been put in by the government of India will also help. Although, honestly speaking, if you ask me, I don't see any rationale of any incentives, because, as I mentioned to you, the fact and the data very clearly highlights that it's a revenue earning model by itself, and it doesn't need any further subvention. But having said that, government in its wisdom has decided to do that. Perhaps it is also you could see the interest of the DISCOMs in the number of bids that have come out. And that's how it is. I don't see any entry barrier here for anyone.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your inputs on that. And there's another question. Over the years, and with the RDSS now rolled out, how has India progressed and worked around the challenges of DISCOMs and their consumer centricity? And how do you see it going forward as well?
So I think one of the most important aspects of smart meters, which perhaps is not talked about so much, is that it brings consumer into the focus at the center, because a large part of the benefit actually belongs to the consumer. I mean, you and I, if you remember, we get our bills after 2 months. You don't even remember why the bill was low or high. But here, you can actually, on a real-time basis, a consumer can look at his consumption, can monitor his consumption, can reduce consumption by switching off essential loads. So I think this is bringing the consumer back into the focus, and that is where the implicit fact remains is the policy of the government is also going. For example, last year, for the first time, the government of India came out with the consumer rights. That what is the rights of the consumers, and I think this is something which is a very, very important step. I don't think consumers were considered to be an important stakeholders in the past, while they were for sure. But I think now with these new elements that are coming in, shows that it's more of a service that you get from any other sector, which is coming into and being imbibed in the power sector, which is for the good of the sector.
All right. There's another question which has just come in. Given the financial health of the utilities in India, do you think the utilities will take up this proposition as a mission-made project, or will resort to wait-and-watch strategy?
So the evidence which we have seen, which I mentioned, with 4 crore meter bids out in the last 3-4 months itself, shows that there is a lot of excitement in the DISCOM, because they also realize that it is not sustainable for them to go on in the manner that they are. And we are seeing DISCOMs, not just large DISCOMs, but DISCOMs from Assam, from other smaller states like Puducherry. UP came out with a 2.5 crore bid. We have seen states like Maharashtra come out with bids, and many more. I know Telangana is on the anvil, Tamil Nadu on the. So I don't see any lack of enthusiasm among the DISCOMs. Of course, as you see in any other sector, some will move quickly, some will take their own sweet time. But as far as the political alignment is concerned, regardless of which party is in power in which state, I think there is a very, very correct understanding that unless you do this and correct this, the sector and the DISCOM will not survive for long.
All right, that's a great info. Now, also, Indian utilities have been a victim to fragmented digitalization as a result of multiple schemes over the last decade. However, the true benefits of AMI infrastructure lies in the seamless integration. How do you think RDSS scheme would be able to empower the distribution utilities to overcome this?
So essentially, if you see the history of digitization of the grid over the last maybe 15 years, large part of the transmission is completely digitized, the long distance transmission. And in most DISCOM, till about 33 kV substations, you have the SCADA systems which have been running. What you don't have is on the distribution transformer side and the consumer side, a digitization. So I think the smart meter is the first step. As a next step, if the SCADA systems are at 33/11 kV substation levels are then connected to the consumption side, I think you have a functional smart grid, which will help DISCOMs in many ways. First of all, improve their service. Number two, able to seamlessly offer time of day metering and tariffs to the consumers. Thirdly, it'll help in integration of low cost renewable energy, which many DISCOMs find it very difficult for them to integrate. So it's something you have to look at a 5-year horizon before we can say that yes, parts of our utilities are now actually truly smart. And honestly, if you actually install and implement smart meter in the right spirit, I'm 100% sure that the tariffs in this country are going to reduce. And why am I saying this? Today, 84% of the people are paying for 100% of power. If 100% of people start paying for 100% of power, the tariffs will only go down. The losses will reduce. And that's why it's something which is an absolute win-win for all the stakeholders involved in the sector.
All right, that's a very optimistic remark, I would say. Sir, I just have one last question for you before we wrap up your session. What are the other associated measures that are planned or being undertaken to ensure the smart metering program is able to drive home the envisaged benefits for like the maximum output in India?
So what you get out of a smart meter project is data, invaluable data with a 15-minute interval. So a part of the scheme focuses on artificial intelligence, machine learning, data mining, all to put together an analytics that will not only help DISCOMs to better understand the consumption patterns so that they are able to procure power in a much more efficient manner, but also offer services like time of day tariffs. If you recollect, in 90s, the telecom had a time of day tariff where the STD rates in the night, middle of the night, were 1/4 of what it was in the morning. If you do the same, for example, in electricity sector, and when you have low cost renewable energy between 12 p.m. and let's say 4 p.m. in the afternoon, if you reduce the tariffs by 1 or 2 rupees for domestic consumers, maybe I'll shift my washing machine load to that point in time. I'll shift some other loads during that time. So this will only make the sector financially more sound, much more smart, and ready for the future, as we say. So these are the things that are part of the scheme itself.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for all your inputs. It was very informative.
Thank you.